7:02, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Should say a prayer for the people of Ukraine.
Absolutely.
Horrible. I'm watching
Doing
the
that
news.
all day.
Sad. Horrible.
How can we put off election of officers until we get everything? Okay? Yeah, let's do that.
So sad what they're doing.
So we're gonna skip election of officers. We'll put it off until the next meeting. Hopefully Carl will be here then, and he should be here when he gets nominated. Alternates? Who's for whom? Are you a regular or an alternate? Alternate. Okay. So why don't we seat Donna for regular members? Or Carl? How about that?
And then, it would be bad for Barbie.
Very good. Done. Welcome. Next agenda item is public participation. If anyone has anything they want to bring up to the commission that is not on the agenda, now's your chance. Nobody? Okay, we'll go on. Next item is the show cause hearing for Bagley Road and two homes on Painter Road. And do we know when Land Tech's gonna get here?
Present.
You're here?
Yep.
How about you come up and introduce yourself and give us a brief overview of your report, please?
Good evening. My name is Anthony Zumba. I'm a senior environmental analyst with Land Tech Consultants based out of Westport, Connecticut. I was hired by the town to review the documentation of the three properties that are on the agenda tonight: 209 Bagley Road, 192 Painter Road, and 214 Painter Road, where clearing of forested cover type occurred in portions of the wetlands and upland review area associated with those three properties. I have a progress draft report that was submitted for town feedback that basically describes the wetland and watercourse resources out there. I'm not sure if you've all had a chance to review that, but
It's distributed to everybody on the commission.
okay. So I don't need to go over the okay. So skip right to my conclusions and recommendations. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I've concluded that the timber harvest resulted in a loss of palustrian forested cover type within a portion of the eastern wetland, and forested cover type within upland review area of both the eastern and western wetlands. And if you're familiar with the report, eastern and western wetlands are in reference to for orientation purposes, in reference to 209 Bagley. The western wetland occurs only on 209 Bagley. The eastern wetland occurs apparently on all three properties. I wasn't exactly sure of where the property boundaries were, but for certain, eastern wetland is on 209 Bagley and 192 Painter, and extends onto 214 Painter as well. Wasn't quite sure exactly where the clearing stopped in relation to the property boundaries for 214 Painter. And so those palustrian wetlands occur along a riparian corridor associated with an unnamed tributary and perennial watercourse. And so there is concern there of impact to the functions and values of the wetlands. There was restoration plans that were prepared to address these impacts, but the restoration plans were deficient in a number of areas that I identified in my report. I typically approach assessments of these types of impacts from a functions and values point of view, and the restoration plan does not provide recommendations in relation to lost functions and values of the wetlands. So that was a glaring omission. It also, the restoration plans did not include any type of mitigation efforts to address the loss of the cover type in terms of replacement plantings. So identified that as another glaring omission. Really, what they accounted to was a site stabilization plan and not a restoration plan. So I identified some areas where additional attention needs to be, and detail needs to be included to make it, in fact, a restoration plan. And when I was out on the property, I noticed that the erosion and sedimentation control measures that were set in place were in disrepair. So that's a concern. Those need to be, of course, maintained, whether it be daily or weekly inspections, certainly after major rainfall events. And I think that's about all for the major points, and you could read the additional detail there. Again, this is a progress draft report, so I would recommend any feedback from you all, and we could take it from there.
Okay, before we go into that, is there other information you would like to have to flesh this out more, or are you fairly comfortable with the data you have today?
Well, I did see the property in January, and there was sufficient snow cover at the time, and of course it's outside the growing season, so it would be helpful to see the resources again during the growing season. It would help me get a better understanding on the composition of the vegetation, and that relates back to functions and values of what the property has to offer in terms of what the significance of those wetlands are. We do know that the tributary feeds into a downstream watercourse that has fisheries of conservation concern. I did view the watercourse, and it still has a tree cover over the direct channel, but some of the adjacent areas to the west were cleared, with some of the slash falling down into the riparian corridor. So it'd be helpful to see it in the growing season. Other than that, I think the rest of my recommendations and conclusions stand.
Assuming that we get a modified mitigation plan or restoration plan, would it be better, do you have that with you? Would you take a look at it again? Which I'm assuming probably not until April or May.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Trying to make things a little more efficient. This is
Right.
a somewhat cumbersome process.
Understood.
Okay. I don't have any specific questions. I thought the report was very good.
Thank you.
Any of the other members have any?
No, it was really detailed, yeah, and I like your recommendations.
Thank you.
Ben?
What about the issue of not knowing exactly where the lines are, the property, the lines of the wetland areas? Should those be marked out?
It would have, we had asked that that be done, it wasn't. It probably would be helpful, but I don't know that it's really critical, because it's all gonna be taken care of at the same time, I imagine. And, it's not gonna change fee structure or anything like that, so I don't think it's a critical issue. And do you think it's more important to mark the property lines, or is that?
Well, I think the gentleman was referring to the actual border of the wetland. That would be helpful to whomever is preparing the restoration plan, because typically you approach that by determining the area that is within the wetland and then areas within the upland, and adjust your plantings accordingly. So it'd help from a quantification point of view on the square footage for seeding rates and planting frequency.
Okay. So that would be something to be included in the revised plan. Right, is that what you meant, that? I misunderstood. I thought you were
yes.
talking property lines, okay. That's it, I have no questions, Bob. Any? No? While you're here, Mr. Zemba, would you mind giving us a brief summary of your curriculum vitae for the record?
Certainly, yep. From an education point of view, I have a Bachelor of Science in biology with ecology concentration. I have a master's degree in environmental science, again with ecology concentration. I also have a soil science certification from the University of Massachusetts. That's a professional certification and meets OPM standards for being able to delineate wetlands in the state of Connecticut. I have a little over 30 years of experience in natural resource management, a lot of it having to do with wetland ecology and wetland science. I have professional experience in past employment with aquatic toxicology and forestry.
That's scary. That's a lot. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think, I don't know that we have any other questions. Do you guys have anything you'd like to ask?
I have a lot to say.
Pardon me?
I have a lot to say. Yeah, we have our, our representative here.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We can call you back shortly.
Sure.
Good evening. Jim McManus, Certified Professional Soil Scientist with JMN Wetland Consulting Services out of Newtown, Connecticut. A little bit about me. I have a master's degree from the University of Connecticut in Soil, Plant and Soil Science. I have over 30 years of experience in soil and natural resource projects from Maine to Florida, as far west as Minnesota. I've seen a lot. That's enough about me. I just wanted a little housekeeping. Our flags are in the field. I was there today. They're still there. And they've been survey located. I'm sure you have maps in front of you that show my boundary location of wetlands and uplands. What else? Oh, the water course that's on site, the tributary that the consultant was talking about is very long distance, which is Jeremy Brook. It's a very long distance. And so temporal impacts to Jeremy Brook from our little site is a little bit of a stretch in my opinion. Anyways, as you folks know, the commission here regulates direct impacts to wetlands. What are those? They could be filling. They could be sedimentation, erosion, and sedimentation ended up in the wetlands. Impacts to hydrology, impacts to stream flow, water quality impacts. We have none of those as relates to this project. None. Zero. Only a few trees are actually taken down in the eastern wetland that are actually inside the wetland itself. Most of the tree removal was in the upland review area. I had the surveyor sort of figure it out, and it was probably generous, but we had about 262 square feet of direct impact through a skidder who was stacking his logs by 209's driveway, which was probably disturbed at the time anyways. But we did not clear cut the lot. The stream, the trees were not taken down to the stream edge. This temporal discussion is, in my opinion, is a little premature. As we discussed earlier, we have no idea what the wetland's gonna look like in the summertime once we have the new growth. In some regards, in 3 to 4 years, we have an additional habitat that's not there, that wasn't there previously, meaning in the shrubs and herbaceous layer. Invasives can be a problem. I talked to the 3 gentlemen that own the properties, and we are looking at a 3-year invasive species review at the end of the growing season, and we'll eradicate the best that we can for those 3 years to keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff. I am not at the same conclusion. This report, though, was thorough and well done I would expect this sort of detail and size of report for a DOT project or a large overhead power line or gas line, not for 3 little properties here with a few trees that were taken down next to a wetland and a first order stream that probably, I would say in a warm summer that stream probably doesn't flow much in August. I would say it might be considered perennial, but I'm sure there's minimal flow in the middle of the dry part of the summer.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned minimal trees. Since you mentioned it, how
Right.
many minimal trees were cut down?
2, I count 2 or 3
trees?
stumps in the wetlands. 2 or 3 stumps. Everything else was in the upland
Stumps,
review.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm just not in same conclusion. We are not presenting any mitigation that regards plantings at this point. It's way too premature. We have no idea what that wetland's gonna look like. Again, most of the brush removal, if you will, was in the upland review area. It's not in the wetland. And unless somebody can tell me where our direct impacts to these wetlands are, I didn't hear any. I heard a temporal was the only one I could pick up in this report, and I disagree with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you repeat?
I said the only impact that your consultant came up was a temporal impact, temperature, and I don't agree with it. So we're not gonna do any replacement plantings. There is absolutely no need to do that. The tributary is a extreme distance away from this particular site. There's flags in the field, and we didn't have a function and values report because there was no need to have a function and values report. We didn't impact the wetlands. We had some trees taken down in an upland review area.
How many trees?
I have no idea. A number of them. No idea. No idea. A number of them, but there's no impact to the wetlands. That's why we're here. And there's no direct impact, physical impact to the wetlands with these fellas' harvesting activities. And that's my conclusion.
Well, this will be very interesting.
It will be. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do too.
Comments, gentlemen, ladies?
I think we're gonna take our time with this one,
Oh, we are.
yeah.
I recommend that, as I think anybody who's walked the site, and certainly your consultant, and I actually said it too, and the gentleman here has actually said it, there's a lot of slash. Unfortunately, when the tree guy cut the logs, he left the slash in the wetlands.
Yes, it's still there.
It's still there, because we'd like to get that opportunity to have the professional tree person, I forget their name. Mike Swift, from, what's the name of it? All About Trees, is gonna take all that debris out of there. And then, in my restoration plan, it said we're gonna take the debris out, either through mechanism or by hand, depending on how far he can reach in. And then when that's all done, he'll clean up his ruts and stabilize the area with a wildlife seed mix. The problem is now it's summer. I mean, it's getting near springtime is in a week or so, and the frost is out of the ground, and things are going to be much more difficult. But
Yes,
we might be arguing about if we should have a planting plan, or we're going to disagree about that. But maybe we can agree on at least getting that part of the restoration or the violation squared away by at least start getting this process moving by removing the
I was going to
slash.
suggest that perhaps that would be an appropriate first step.
Yes, exactly. I hope so. Because we want to get that going.
Get us a proposal to that effect.
Sure.
I think that would be very helpful.
Got it?
It's gonna get a lot messier before it gets any better.
You betcha. And I like to get that slash out of there so we can get the undergrowth moving. Because right now it's kind of being covered up.
Any comment on that?
That'd be good.
Do we need our consultant to respond to this?
We should do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to respond. I think so from the word temporal, I'm talking about time, not temperature. So,
thought it was a temperature with
yeah, no. So by temporal impact, I'm meaning over time, like, so forest cover was removed, so you're not gonna gain that back anytime soon. I mean, especially with the size of these trees, some being up over 24-inch diameter at breast height. those trees have to be, I don't know, 70, 100 years old, something like that.
How
would
many
be-
do you estimate that were ballpark?
It's hard to say because of the snow cover. So, and then, the other concern I had was, I don't know if erosion and sedimentation is finding its way down into the stream, again, because of the snow cover. And so with heavy rains coming in the spring, it's imperative that ENS control be maintained, which it was not. So that's a big concern, and I'm glad that Mr. McManus agrees that monitoring for the invasive species is a prudent measure, because now that tree canopy is gone, it potentially could encourage a prolific growth of the invasive species. And these are the types of plants that look for disturbance to the soil, disturbance in opening up canopy so that sunlight can reach the ground floor again. So, and there may be some advantage in waiting before planting, because just as some invasive species may come up and take advantage of that new light, so may native species as well. So there is potential for native plant species of high wildlife value to take advantage of a canopy gap. Time will tell. But the important thing is to have those areas monitored professionally, and establish points of observations, and come back and see who's winning that battle. And typically the invasives wins, because that's how they grow fast, they're aggressive, and they can outcompete the natives. So I think that's probably the most important thing at this point is invasive control. Sounds like they're on board for that, so that's a good thing. And so I just wanted to point that out and correct or clarify what I meant by temporal impacts.
Could you briefly, well, let me ask, I'll put it as a question. What's the effect on the wetlands of having those large trees taken out?
So again, the impact could be now you allow for invasives to come in and take over, and therefore reduces the functions and values from a wildlife habitat point of view. Typically, riparian corridors are important corridors for plants and animals and our native wildlife. So if the area starts becoming overrun by invasive plant species, then theoretically you lose the value of that function.
So would planting of appropriate large tree saplings, whatever, in the area expedite controlling the invasives?
Generally, that's the point of view. Two things could happen out there. You could get, like I said, expression of the native seed bed, and if that comes in lush and thick and can hold its own against the invasives, then maybe with some judicial pruning, frequently, you may start to see the succession heading in the favor of the natives, and that would be a good thing to let that progress. There's also I noticed a few saplings, a few shrubs that were not damaged from when the trees fell. Theoretically, they may take advantage of the extra sun as well. It's called releasing the understory, and then they'll theoretically provide for added coverage. And so the crowns will start to take advantage of that light and proliferate as well.
What would be an appropriate time frame to monitor that and see what it is doing so you could control it?
Yeah, well, so the invasives come out early, and so they start leafing out, like
Tomorrow.
yeah, within the next couple warm spells here, so you're going to want to progress through the growing season to see after the natives come up, if they're able to compete with the invasives. So you're at least going to want to go through a growing season to see, how that's going to start to pan out. The site is probably going to be hard to plant trees as saplings because there's a ton of boulder out there, and it's going to be hard digging.
Extremely stony.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're not trying to make things impossible.
right.
We're trying to get this thing back into something approaching the condition it was in a reasonable period of time, without driving anybody into bankruptcy. Okay, any other thoughts you might have on?
So in terms of the impact to Jeremy Brook being a stretch and being a long distance away, Jeremy Brook and its tributaries, they're all connected systems. If there's a significant erosion and sedimentation event that occurs in that stream, that's a concern. And you'd be hard pressed to put a distance on any impact until it actually occurs and so you see what the effects are. And so,
Just as soon avoid having
just,
things.
yeah, it's just better to avoid it right from the get-go.
So if I understand what you're saying, and correct me when I'm wrong, first thing to do would be to control restore the sedimentation, erosion controls.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. McManus's recommendations that a seed cover get put down as soon as possible. Yep.
Okay, and then it
for
might
that
be
purpose.
worthwhile doing nothing through the spring period until we see what's coming up, monitor that, take another look at it in the fall maybe,
Correct.
and
Yeah, as long as a qualified person is doing the monitoring, yeah.
what
Such as Mr. McManus, yeah. Yep. And not the homeowner.
is.
No, I mean, no offense.
Okay.
Yep.
That'll give us time to
Yeah.
maybe look at other
Yeah.
cases
Um,
too.
One thing I think we would like to do is get an application in to get some of this stuff started. I think, Mr. McManus, we would need some kind of an outline on approaching the immersion controls.
Can I step up?
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, my thought process was to actually get the tree guy to get something in writing and get it to town staff, to at least, they can at least take a look at it. I don't want to wait another month.
No, I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, because he's the guy, he's the expert, he knows how to do this, it's not his first rodeo. Let's get him and say, hey, this is what we need to have done, we need to have it done soon, very soon. And you got to lay out how you're going to do it.
And you're gonna need that information to put in the application.
Yes.
To do it. So
Yes,
please do that.
yes.
I don't think we have any issue with that. I would like to, just a moment, I would like to get the application process rolling. So when you have that information and are ready to come in to present that, we can discuss where we go from there. Any additional information in terms of what you think is appropriate at this point, given what you've heard here tonight, would be very helpful for us. And I guess that's enough for me to say right now.
Yeah, I think some of the recommendations, like I said before, might be a little premature. I think if we get the area cleaned out and back to somewhat normal, and then we let it grow, and then we make some more intelligent decisions on where to go next.
I don't think we have a problem with doing it in stages, as long as we know that they're going to be
Yeah,
stages.
well, I don't know what the tree guy's schedule is, but I'd like to get him out there next week if we could, to get this thing rolling.
I don't think we would object to that, but we do need an application.
Yes, that's.
Um,
Yep. So the application comes in, but when can we, let's say we get the application in by Friday, for instance.
Okay.
Can the tree guy, and he gets his information in too, obviously, how he's gonna lay it out.
Yeah, we probably need that.
Yeah, can we start, or we have to wait till the next meeting date?
I would not like to wait till the next meeting, but Ty, are you comfortable looking at that? Can we?
I think it's your decision to look at I mean, you can leave it up to me, or call a special meeting if you wanna look at it.
What I'd like to do, if we can do it, would be to authorize
And,
I'm with you, I don't think we wanna wait.
no, not with this part of the project. We need to get this thing rolling.
Well, it's the time of year too.
Yeah, I would have liked to have done it in January because the ground was so hard and blah. But it is what it is. It's not January, it's March. Yeah, clearly, yeah, I mean, once that's done, we need to, if there's rutting, we need to fix that. We need to get the erosion controls established. And then, as Mr. Zimba said, we need to get our seed mix down. And then hopefully Mother Nature will kick in as well.
But you can work on the erosion controls because they're already there.
Yes,
Preparing.
but I mean, when he brings in the equipment,
That's a whole different matter.
that's a whole different matter.
Yeah, if you just outline the steps, I'm comfortable authorizing Ty to do that.
Yeah, as long as it's not a lot of work is being done, like, in the wetland area.
No,
There's no work in the
no,
wetlands.
they're not gonna do that.
Because there's,
Basically, you're gonna haul the slash out,
we're essentially hauling all of the slash out that was left, most of it in the wetland.
and then, presumably fill in any ruts or anything.
Filling in any ruts with that removal process and then seed, because it's
So what kind
It's
of
time.
seed? I guess one of my concerns is that,
Well,
like, I heard you,
if I may, just for a second.
okay.
I don't know if I handed this in last time, I gotta get on the mic.
Instead of wetland mix,
Yeah, I'll give you this.
but I don't know what the specs were on it.
All right.
This is what I was proposing. It's out of the New England wetlands plants. They're out of Massachusetts. They have a bunch of different things, and that's the seed mix. Because we're not seeding the wetland, we're just seeding the upland review area. So I was just gonna toss that down if necessary.
Right.
And we're also gonna have wood chips probably too, so we could use wood chips for stabilization too.
Instant stabilizer until it floods off.
But we also want to get back to what it was. We want to restore it, not,
Well, you're not gonna restore a mature forest within 2 years.
right, I realize that, but I'm just.
But that's why I'm saying if we let Mother Nature take its course, let's see what happens.
Let's-
It may be,
That's something we're going to have to think about, though, because,
Yeah, let's get
one
the
of the.
plan in
Okay.
for now and get started on what needs immediate attention. which is
Right.
Getting the slash out of there and getting the erosion controls established.
correct,
At the next meeting, and Ty can take a look at that and approve that in the interim.
yes,
And then at the next meeting, we will have your proposal, we will have had it looked at, we'll have had a chance to look at it, and we can go from there and address your concerns, I think. I
Yeah.
really don't wanna wait any longer.
No,
Yeah,
no.
Bob.
I just have a question for Bonnie. Do you know if that seed mix that you just handed out was entered into the record that we were?
We can distribute it, we have.
I think I did it last time, but I don't recall. But,
I know that your proposal
Okay.
said New England seed mix.
right,
I don't know that it spelled out what they were, and I believe,
yeah,
Mr. Zem's report said he would like to see what you were proposing.
yeah, I think the last time I was here, hang on. I think I handed out that piece of paper, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think so. I don't recollect, but it's entirely possible. Anyway, we have it now.
We have it now, so
We'll go from there.
that's what we're thinking about, so,
I'm proposing that we authorize that.
yep, there it
In
is.
fact, I will move that we allow that to go forward as discussed. Give a second. Don
I'll
seconds.
second it.
In favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, please.
Howard Allen, 192 Painter Road. I just want to say, I've lived at Painter Road for 38 years now. And when my kids were little, they used to play down in the area, that brook and stuff. And in the summertime, there's barely any water in that brook that trickles down through that brook. This is not a brook that flows in any sort of volume or anything. It's even in a heavy rain, it's a slow rolling brook. And in the summertime, it's barely moving. And there's already sand in that brook along the whole run from the years that I've been there. Sand just is in that waterway. It's not from anything that's just happened. And to say that we are going to impact this waterway that's miles away from where we are just doesn't seem to make sense on a brook that barely trickles in the summertime. And there's never been any fish in there either. It's just too low a level of water in that brook in order to carry any fish through that area. You know, there's obviously little toads and stuff like that, but that's the extent of it. So anyway, we do care about that area. We do care about that brook and everything. And we've lived here a long time and we want it fixed as best we can. But, you know, there's some limits, and, you know, some of the things that were stated in the report that you got from Land Tech just seem to be far beyond an extreme assessment. Thank you.
Thank you for your commentary. Anyone else? Okay, I think we've closed that matter out for the moment. Shall we move on to the next agenda item? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Mr. Zembo, when we get their proposal for the next steps, we will be forwarding that for you to take a look at. I believe that's all right.
Yes, certainly. Yep.
Sort of taking a step-by-step approach here because we feel we need to do something quickly before it gets worse.
That sounds fine.
Make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business, application 1679, 233 West Purchase Road, two-lot subdivision.
Good evening, all. My name is Max Wolf. I work with Wolf Engineering. Our office is in Woodbury, Connecticut. My father, Ron Wolf, could not be present for tonight's meeting. I'm here representing the owners and applicants Thomas and Jennifer White, who live at 233 West Purchase Road, which is the existing house on Lot 1. There's a water course and wetlands located towards the rear of the property that were delineated by Eric Davison, professional soil scientist. The applicants are proposing one new building lot to construct a new house on. The proposed lot is 2.16 acres and is located in an open hayfield. There's no activity proposed in the wetlands or within the 50-foot regulated area. There was a field walk held with the Wetland Commission on February 17th. The house will be 4 bedrooms. It's in an R80 zone, and the house will have septic and well.
Did we do that? Yeah, you and I did that, right?
No,
I think Dan was
Dan
there.
was here, yeah.
You weren't able to make it. I was there, Thad, and Dan was there. Did you want to review your?
To be honest, this looked like one of the easiest decision-making things that we have. The property there is field, it's open, it slopes down towards the water course. We looked at where the well was going to be placed, where the septic system was going to be placed, the driveway coming in, it really doesn't impinge on anything. So assuming that it goes according to plan, little or no impact. And even the grass, as wet as everything was, the grass seems to be fairly well drained. It's not like mushy, wet, soggy pasture. Of all the site visits I've done recently, this was one of the easiest ones to say that seems like little or no supervision is going to be needed.
Sounds simple enough. So, I move that we approve the,
So I did a resolution of approval for you. Did you get a
Can't
copy
hear
of?
you, sorry.
I did a resolution of approval for
course
you.
you
It's all
guys are too
the
good.
basic conditions with just 2 additions, and the one is the wetlands marker was the one that I kind of recommended.
Okay. You okay with wetland markers? All right. Then I would move that we approve resolution as submitted.
Thank you.
Second,
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye. All opposed? None.
Was that your dad that couldn't make it tonight?
Yeah, my father,
You
Ron
had
Wolf.
record-breaking time getting it done.
Thank you.
Excellent
Better
job,
than he
Tom.
could have.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's next? Agenda. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have new business, just mark them all for site visits. Done. Other business. Public Works Projects, Mr. Giroux. Thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Gary Giroux. I work for Cardinal Engineering, and we represent Public Works Department here in the town of Southbury. This is just an informal discussion right now with the commission. We will be submitting a formal application next month, and hopefully it'll be just as easy a decision as you just made tonight. What we're doing is we were retained by the town to provide repair on two bridges within town, Heritage Road and Floodbridge Road. The bulk of the work will be up on top, where we will be removing the overlay, the pavement, getting down to the top of the concrete deck, repairing the deck, and putting a new overlay on top. Some approach work on the road, on the approach roadways coming into the bridge, new joints on the bridge, and we will be doing some concrete repair work underneath, on the underside of the structure, on the abutment walls and the pier walls. Because it's the Pomperaug River and the upland review area will be well within the upland review area, so the town determined they will be submitting an application to the board here to the commission to review it and hopefully approve the work effort. There will be no work done in the wetlands, nothing within the river itself. Any repair work on the underside of the structure that's over the river will be done over the sides by a bucket, a boom truck. Any debris that may fall in will be, we'll have shields up and/or nets to catch debris that is chipped off and patch it all up. So it's gonna be a minimal impact all around, but the guys at Public Works wanted me to make a presentation tonight before we submit the application, just to get you on board with what we're doing. Pardon?
Loosen us up.
Grease the
Yeah.
skids.
So, I mean, what it's gonna do is gonna take these two bridges and add another 25-year life to it, as opposed to spending $4 million each to replace them. Hopefully, we'll get the work done for about $400,000 apiece. So, it's a huge savings for the town. And, yes, sir.
Excellent. So, the one that we went out to look at, which one was that?
That's a different one altogether. That's already been approved.
Okay, because that one, they were gonna take the bridge out and replace it.
Replace the culverts and
Okay.
everything, yeah.
So these other two,
We're not taking anything out. We're
Okay.
just doing superficial work on the surface.
And underside.
And on the underside, the sides, and any protection, and we'll like any project we do, we'll put silt fence up to potentially catch anything that may get into the river. They will not have any, on Heritage Road, on the golf course side where the golf cart is, they may have some equipment down there in between the abutment and the pier. But, again, we'll install silt fencing and any erosion control measures just for the sake of catching it before it gets into the river.
Sometimes
It should be minimal. It really should be minimal.
you taking any paint off?
We are anticipating, there's no paint on the bridge except on the bridge rail.
Okay.
There may be some repair work on the bridge rail. They may have to take some paint off. The Public Works is gonna get it tested for lead. It's an older bridge. There's probably lead in the paint.
Probably it's an old bridge.
So, and it'll be a spot removal of paint, and probably we'll just paint the entire rail and just encapsulate all that existing lead paint
Okay.
going forward. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Again, a formal application will be submitted and for your review at the next meeting.
You know when they're thinking about doing the work?
We're anticipating going out to bid mid-April.
Okay, so won't get anything done until June or something like that?
By the time they sign a contract and get contractors on board, we're looking at probably around June 1st.
Didn't hear that?
June 1st,
June, yeah,
start of construction,
sounds about right.
and probably last a good 3 or 4 months.
Okay. You're gonna have to close down any part of the bridges?
Flood Bridge Road will be closed to traffic while they're doing the work up on top. Anything down below, they don't have to close.
Okay.
Heritage Road, it'll be a phased construction.
Be
We-
one side, then the other.
Yeah.
That'll be a mess.
Yes, it will. But, I mean, it's short term, 3 or 4 months, and when we're done, you're gonna have I don't wanna say a new bridge, but it's gonna be pretty close to being, well, in good shape to serve the town for a long time.
Great. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Getting the full application.
I intend to. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Okay. Reports of officers, staff, and committees. What is that?
I know.
Oh, God, thank goodness.
Yeah, I don't have much to offer.
It's been a quiet.
There's, so the 270 Crugan Circle is the result of me being called out to Heritage Village regarding tree cutting in a wetlands area. They didn't do much, but they kind of made their way in and they were starting to cut, and I got called out there, and they were very good about stopping and coming in and putting in an application, so that's what they'll be coming, we'll be going out to the sidewalk for, and they'll be coming to the next meeting to kind of review with you. Not much else that I can think of. I'm thinking spring is here, I'm gonna get a lot of calls,
Yes,
but,
you are.
yeah, I'm enjoying the rest right now.
Well, you're getting bored, not getting bored.
Oh, yes, that's what it is.
Okay, bills and receipts.
Oh, I should mention, if you don't mind me backing up, so I was explaining to Thad that the Board of Selectmen did have their public hearing regarding the aquifer and transitioning over to the Wetlands Commission, and they voted to adopt the new ordinance that allows that, so that'll be published in the paper in 15 days. After that, it'll take effect. At that point, the Board of Selectmen will, I'm assuming, will appoint all of you to the new Aquifer Protection Agency officially, and then you can get started on your work with that.
Have any clue what that's gonna actually involve? Because I certainly don't.
Yeah, so the first thing that you need to do is adopt the model regulations, similar to what you've done in the past with wetlands. The DEP puts out model regulations and the commission has to adopt them, so that'll be your first mission. Other than that, I've already kind of sent out letters months ago to everybody in the aquifer protection area, making them aware that they're there, and if any of the activities on the list they're involved in, to come in with an application. I did not get much response. So there's not a lot that goes on in those areas in this town. I know I sent out the link to everybody about the training. I know Thad took advantage of it. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity yet, but it's through Yukon Clear. So
It's
those kind of-
always there.
it's
and
always there.
It's on demand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so when you have an opportunity, that's kind of helpful to kind of bring you up to speed. It'll pretty much let you know what's expected. But yeah, I don't
What's the name of it?
think it's gonna be a huge amount of work
So, do people have to, so you're saying people have to submit permits to have work completed in those areas? that may-
To operate, so it's more geared toward businesses, the home enterprises are businesses, there's like a list of, I can't remember, 21 different things that if you're doing in the aquifer, you need to register. And then by registering, it's kind of being monitored and making sure that, you know, everything falls into place as it should be. Not saying that you can't do it, you have to do it just like wetlands, you have to just
Right.
do it safely and the right way, so, there is really not a lot in town, you know, and we've even touched upon all private residences to let them know if they have a home enterprise, they need to register as well, and,
I didn't get one.
we haven't
Maybe
gotten
do.
on. Yeah,
Okay.
and going forward, just recently, the DEP requires that any new applications that come in for zoning related things, need to go to them, so they need to be informed, and there's like a little thing that they have to fill out, so it's a lot of education to people who are living in those areas, so that they
This town
know.
makes a lot of it,
A lot
a
of
lot of areas.
area,
Yeah,
yes,
it's a
but not a
protected
lot of activity, so
Not
that's.
too much, most of it's golf courses.
Well, still, any kind of pesticide, herbicide application, all has to be
Yep,
filed.
horse farms have issues.
Interesting. So we need to know those regulations.
Should be,
Yes, yeah, I mean, I can share the model with you if you're interested in getting a jump on
do
things.
you have it electronically?
Yeah, I could always
Sure.
scan it in.
That'd be great.
I just want to say, you know, they say something like, this thing could take 8 hours or something. I finished it in 2.5 hours. So it's not quite as lengthy as it might lead you to believe. And the other thing is, bear in mind, we basically have 2 aquifers in town. One is up by the Southbury Training School, and the other one's down in the center of town where the businesses are. One of the things that,
All the way up
that
to the golf course.
Ty just mentioned is the fact that businesses that are existing are kind of grandfathered. But if they change what they're doing, like at a garage, and they start doing something else, and using different kinds of fluids or grease or oil or lubricants or whatever it is, then they have to go through a process of clearing it through us. And the other thing is, this is something I haven't quite figured out as far as the learning process goes, but this big push they have for this, they want to get more affordable housing in every town in Connecticut. And a lot of these more affordable homes are like condo units, where you might have a dozen condos in one building. Those kind of buildings, they don't lend themselves to putting in well pumps and septic systems, you know, in the grass out in front. You know, there's too many buildings
Too intense.
to drill one pump, or one well pump, one well, and then have it pumped into the thing. So those are the kind of things, if they're on the fringe of the business thing and over the aquifer, where they're probably gonna have to tap into the existing water system that we
Heritage
have in
Village.
town. So there are gonna be some issues to look at.
We have had some proposed activity for affordable housing too that was not on Heritage Water though. So that'll be interesting if we get more of those.
Yeah. You're talking about the one out on 60?
Yeah. That specific, that one, the original proposal was for what, 14 units? Something like that? So that could potentially be an issue, but it's not in front of us now, so
No.
we don't need to worry about it yet.
No, the limited experience I had from the development end was we were highly discouraged to go anywhere near it. And it was even with low-grade uses. I remember we were putting up a large gym, and we had to steer clear of it where there was a service facility that was really held to strict standards, not very far. I mean, literally across the highway, not the highway though, or Route 63.
Well, we're all
And,
drinking that water.
They
We don't-
really, I watched what they did, and they were held under strict standards, so the development aspect is probably important for us to key up on too. You know, the uses that are discouraged or can be expensive to develop.
Usually it's cheaper not to go there.
That's what I was advised.
Yep.
And they
Okay.
can't expand the footprint that they have without going through the process of going through our committee and all
Of
that
course.
too.
Yeah, so it'll be a learning curve for us too.
Yeah.
Be interesting. Very
It's
good.
almost like the wetlands, the aquifer is a wetland, and that's it.
In
You stay
fact,
away
it
from
is.
it with
That's right.
non-disturbance area and everything.
Yeah,
The Cliff Notes version, I guess.
and some of us have it on our property, so. Okay, did we beat that enough? Bills and receipts, man.
No bills, and then there was, total receipts of, $2,280 for 5 applications from
Okay.
January 25th through March 3rd.
Very good. Correspondence, I know we got a letter from Mr. Pielmeyer. Is there anything else of significance? I think so, just didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Minutes, January, regular meeting minutes, any comments, criticisms? No, as usual, if there are no comments, it's approved. I do have one issue to raise about the Bagley Road issues, which is fees. They're gonna be coming in with an application, and they're gonna have to submit fees.
Right.
So,
What was that you said?
The Bagley Road
fees for
fees.
the Bagley Road matter, where they come in with an application, they're gonna have to pay a fee.
Oh, yeah.
Ty could probably explain this better than I can, but we are allowed to, the normal fee is $190 per property, plus a $60 fee that goes to the state. We're allowed to charge up to 3 times that if we want to do so. So the question for you all is, and there are two fees here. There's the forestry fee, which is $250, and then there's an after-the-fact fee because they didn't get the fee the applications in the first place. So 3 times the 190, we could take it up to 570 for a total fee per parcel of $820. The question is, do we want to charge them that, or do we want to charge them something else?
Okay, so this is for 209 Bagley Road.
It's for each property.
For each property.
209 Bagley, 192 Painter, and 214 Painter.
All right.
Need that?
Well, I have a question then. Since they have a plan of starting as soon as they can, and it's going to go for a while before they can actually figure out all the details of how they're gonna manage this, is it wise for us to defer the fines until we see how this project gets underway?
On fines, I would agree, but this is not a fine. This is the
It's a fee.
application fee.
Okay,
This is
never
the,
mind.
like, they should have come in and paid the $250 to cut the trees in the first place. They didn't, so they're gonna get whacked with that one. That's just straight. There's also a fee for an after-the-fact application, which is what we're dealing with, because they didn't put in the application in the first place. It starts at $190 plus $60 for the state, and we are allowed, I gather, under the
Treble
regulations, to charge up to 3 times that amount. And that's a per lot fee. So I'm putting to you guys, the ladies, how much you want to charge them? It's starting to look to me like we're not going to be probably not going to be saying to them, look, you've got to go through this whole restoration program and mitigation, and it's going to cost you $10,000 a piece. Probably not going to go there, from what we heard tonight. given that this was excessive activity at the very least, contractor had no permit, contractor had no license, wasn't supposed to be here, went in there like a maniac and chopped everything down, and haul off what he wanted to, with really no care for anything. How much do we, and they all knew it.
Sure, I have pictures of the trees that towered over Donna and I when we were on site. It was just unbelievable. That's
There
why
are trees this big around.
a
they cut
couple of
down.
stumps kind of,
Yeah.
even in the upland review, I mean, I couldn't believe it. That's why I took pictures of it.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Initially, I was taken aback by the approach that we had, but I do understand that everybody makes mistakes. And, this is a really big mistake in my opinion.
Oh, it's flagrant.
I don't know what's involved with the people they're hiring to do all this, but it's probably gonna be substantial. And, so,
Well,
I can go either way, I just,
Do we know, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you already explained, do we know why they went with someone who was unlicensed?
yeah, it was Bagley's uncle or something like that.
Okay.
And he's already in some kind of investigation and trouble in Massachusetts where he came from.
Cause like,
This was just let's sneak him in here, get the work done, in my opinion, and then get out and no one will know the difference, or make a couple of bucks.
cause my thought process on it is that if this was to kind of be like a quick, simple, oh, we'll save a couple of bucks, then we should go on the higher end to make sure that they don't save a couple of bucks, thus, eliminate that incentive, because that's my thought.
That's
Well,
kind of my thought
Bill, I
process.
had one more thought. Does the town pay our consultants' fees, or
No,
do
they pay them.
They pay them? Okay. All right, then.
And I have no idea what they're charging.
No, I understand.
Well, I would like to incentivize these people, these landowners, to start this project off and actually keep us informed as to what's going on, and, because it's not gonna all be done in 3 months.
It's not gonna be done in 3 years.
It's gonna be an ongoing project for quite a while. If we throw the book at them and the top fee in every category, I don't think we're gonna get as much cooperation as we are if we say, look, here's the fee schedule, we're not gonna charge you the maximum fee, but we're also gonna require you to, in good faith, work with us to make sure that this gets restored as well as possible.
And I'd rather them spend the money on restoration. He was still talking about stabilization, the New England mix, I still see that as stabilization. And there's species that wouldn't be growing there anyway.
Yes, that's
So,
correct.
I know that you can't replace a mature forest, but what about the potential
Well,
for?
That's,
So, I'm a little disappointed to, I hear you say, well, we may not go there based on what was being said.
well, Mr. McManus was not proposing any restoration,
No, pound sand.
okay? He's talking about just control what's there, we'll pull a few invasives, and that'll be fine.
And it could be something different and beautiful, and it's like, well, we want what was there, we don't want something different.
Well, the interesting thing was, I was feeling like maybe things were turning a good point towards the end, and then one of the homeowners mentions, well, there's no fish there, just a few frogs and this and this, and then, I said,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so.
He didn't do himself any good
You
there,
know.
did he?
I don't know.
I don't know how you all feel. My sense is that we are going to not insist on the full plan that Land Tech proposed, because it's frankly just too damn expensive. I think I am gonna lean toward the monitoring, control of the invasives, and some limited planting that is not grass and flowers. Some number of saplings that we would anticipate will grow up. The Land Tech gentleman, Zemba, Mr. Zemba,
He's still there.
He's right here.
who's
He's
right
here.
here, we will wanna talk to him about what less than the full implementation of what he recommended makes some kind of sense. Because frankly, if we go in, as you said, and
Full
beat
blown.
them over the head, they're just gonna say, screw you, we're not doing it. then we'd have to go to the Board of Selectmen and ask them to file suit, and you know how they are about that. That's like, you might as well have to pull their teeth out. So I think we can get something that's better than nothing, and some cooperation. So that's my thought. And I think going in and hammering it with a $800 application fee right up front is probably not the way to do that, but.
Well, I
Good
haven't
idea.
seen those properties or whatever it looks like, but I can tell you on my own 6 acres that, the trees that were cut down, if there were like oak trees and things like that, the amount of acorns that come off my trees every year are enough to plant probably 20 acres, you know, so I think it's hard to really, you know, guarantee that you're gonna get a certain result until you actually implement some things and then see how it works. So I don't think we can come down with a magic cure and say that if you do this, this, and this, everything is gonna be back to normal. I don't think it's ever gonna quite be that
Well,
simple.
I think that's what Mr. Zemba was saying, that you're gonna need to monitor it and see what it is and keep
Right.
cutting out the burning bush. And, maybe 3 years down the road, you need to go back in and plant a few more saplings to fill in the hole where, you know, the deer ate a couple. I would completely agree with you. And it's, the size of these trees, some of them had to be a couple hundred years old.
The only sense I get is if we don't have it reestablished in a reasonable amount of time, if we wait 3 years, the sense that I get from the presentation was, hey, look,
We're done.
we're
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
So I think we have to really get whatever we can get within a period of time, because everyone seems to forget everything after a while, and they seem like their mindset is this is just.
That's their mindset. We're just gonna do the minimal we can, and
Let nature
you'll
speak
forget all
for us,
about
yeah.
us. But if we have a schedule, and we're, you know, we clean up the mess that's now, we see what developed, as Mr. Zephyr proposed, over this growing season, look at it in the fall, then we have it's not out of our minds, and we have a better idea of what's gonna come up and what isn't. We can probably go for some kind of planting scheme from there.
Yeah, and
Does
even
that
some
make any kind of
saplings,
sense to
like you
you?
said, that might survive, you know, I think that would, some saplings, like you mentioned, Bill, that might survive, you know?
Yeah, a couple things to consider. It looked like to me there's significant value in that timber that was cut, and if the person that did cut it did so illegally, then perhaps a punitive fine is in order, which presumably wouldn't be borne by the homeowner. It would be borne ultimately by the person that did the cutting. And if he has a business, then I would hope that he has insurance, and he could submit a claim against his insurance if he can't pay it out of pocket for those fines. And so without taking the approach of a punitive fine, presumably other people in town could say, well, they got away with it, and there's some serious value in that timber. So yeah, let's go and cut it. We'll get slapped with a fine of a few $100s. We'll pay that, but we're going to make thousands off of
We're talking a few $100s. But we're also really not discussing the fines per se.
Right. I understand that,
What I
but
don't wanna do is chase them off
yeah,
on
you,
the application.
you don't want other people in town to be looking at this cost-benefit scenario saying, okay, well, town's going to probably hit us with this, whether it be application fees or fines or whatever it comes out to, but we stand to gain this by cutting down mature forest. And
That's an interesting approach.
so,
Maybe we can require them to give us invoices for the sale of lump timber and
Well,
determine what we do from there. Because, no, you're right, they should not profit from this at all.
well, I'd kind of like to know if there are other cases out there that are like this. Maybe someone do a little bit of footwork to see what the DEEP has done to this individual, you know, like what kind of communications they've had.
Well,
I mean,
I've worked with I called the DEP when it initially happened, and as far as a forestry operation, an illegal forestry operation goes, it's out of their jurisdiction because each parcel was so together, it seemed large, but the parcels themselves don't add up to the acreage from which they would oversee. So they said it's all on the town, pretty much. That's how.
Okay.
I think the idea you mentioned about them not profiting from the trees is great, but I would be willing to bet that the trees are the property of the person who cleared it, because it's normally done, if you're gonna clear it, you get to keep all the trees plus whatever overhead he basically has. The trees go right to whoever cut them all down.
Yeah, but
So
that's
they-
not gonna happen here.
Right.
Because they're
I-
piled up at Bagley
Yeah.
Road property, and he's
There's
gonna
a
sell
lot
them
of,
somewhere.
there's a lot of substantial trees there.
Oh, yeah.
But there were, it was several, according to the neighbors, they were hauled out of there in several
Couple
loads,
truckloads already
yes.
left.
Yes, it's,
Well, that's probably gone. I'm sure that the guy who cut it down has the money from that. I think Bob's right.
So, just out of curiosity, I mean, we still will be able to hit, there are probably gonna be fines at the end of this process. And so we can hypothetically be layer up front, see what cooperation we get, and then decide for the, like when we do the fines, hit them with the fines harder again.
I'm not quite sure at what point we would be assessing fines, but it wouldn't be immediately. I mean, we have to see how they proceed with dealing with the first phase of it, see how that goes, and then I think we have ample opportunity to have, would like Carl to participate in deciding what we do with that, and Dan, for that matter.
So we can make a contingent on what kind of restoration plan? they
Well, we
do?
haven't approved a restoration plan. All we've told them they can do is remove the slash and clean up some of the mess.
Right.
And
But,
stabilize it.
but that we can, is it possible to tie the fine to how well their plans to restore the site?
I have to think about that. Probably not.
Right.
I have to think about
Alright.
it. But we can certainly require the monitoring, and then if the monitoring reveals with independent review, it isn't doing what we wanted it to do, because didn't have sufficient planting, then make them go back in and do the planting and monitor it again. And personally, I don't think this, let's look at it for 2 years and then we're out of the woods, literally, is not appropriate. I think we probably want 5 years at least, subject to extension depending upon what happens. But that's not our discussion for tonight.
Right. One of his first comments, Mr. McManus made, was that he seemed to say that we're interested in restoring habitat versus just like water quantity and quality, which is what our commission is all about.
Right.
Did you get that?
Yes.
So I kind of want to make sure that we are within our rights to
We're
ask
trying
these
to
things.
restore the tree canopy and the understory so that stream will continue to be an effective and functioning wetland with clean water feeding down into
Right.
another stream which is also of high quality and will not deteriorate the conditions of that stream.
So the
So we're not
function and
talking about
values,
bugs
which
and
is what
bunnies.
Right, yeah, it gets back to function and values. And the fact that it could be a trickle in a summer month is irrelevant. There are fish species that swim upstreams during high flow periods for breeding and to complete their life cycles, and then retreat back down to larger streams as the summer moves on and flows start to decrease. So, I haven't seen the reach of the stream from their property down to Jeremy Brook, but it's all connected, at least hydrologically. And so you do want to maintain the integrity of those attributes of that system.
Because that is something that we can stand on. And you made that stand in your report, so,
Yeah, we can't do anything with bugs and bunnies. We're not allowed
right,
to,
right. It's just the function of,
which makes no sense, but that's our authority. So, I'm gonna go back to the original question.
Right.
Rob's proposing we hit him with just the basic fees
The basic fee.
for
the
now, and
idea
if
that
we
is-
decide we don't like to do it, we whack basic fees. There's a forestry fee of $250, and then there is an after-the-fact fee of $190, and there's a $60 on top of that that goes to the state. So that's not inconsequential. It's about $400 less than if we hit with the max.
Is there any way we can make them aware of what they would have been paying, so they
Yeah,
can
we'll tell them.
understand it? Okay.
Ty,
I'll
To-
tell them.
to do it the right way.
She can absolutely tell them,
Yeah.
look, we, looking for your cooperation, hope we're going to get that, and trying to encourage it. We're gonna assess the minimum fines, fees. Please understand that we could have easily doubled this. And that's just to get started. Are you okay with that, Tom?
I will tell them.
Are we okay with the
that.
basic fees?
Yeah.
Okay, we are, everybody's approving. Do you want a resolution in the minutes for that? so we can-
Yeah, motion just to charge the fee and the one after the fact fee as well, correct?
So moved,
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye, unanimous. Carl's gonna be so jealous of all we got done. Okay, I think we're done, aren't we? Anything else? Thank you. Any other, no? All right, I move we adjourn. Second by Bob, and everyone else?
That's on that one.
All in favor?
All right.
Let's go.
Aye. This was an exciting meeting tonight, wasn't it?